A tangled heart inside my chest. The mirror cracked with every glare, but I found hope out in the air. Sensitive stability taught me how to stand with shaking knees and open hands. Through the chaos I found my way, rebuilding life step by step each day.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to the Sensitive Stability BPD live show. For those of you who don't know me, I am your host. My name is Kevin Reynolds. I'm a BPD survivor and a BPD coach. We go live here on TikTok Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST, where we talk about a different topic related to borderline personality disorder. So this morning's topic is designed for those who have BPD, but for the partners out there. So I'm talking to you with BPD in terms of how you deal with your partner who does not have BPD. For those of you who are partners of someone with BPD or parents with BPD, you may find this interesting because I'll be speaking to the BPD people that you love. Of which how you as the partner or parent sees it, right? So a good example, just to paint this clearer, thank you, Michelle. I'm imagining that I am talking to, let's say, my wife before remission. I'm imagining that I'm talking to, say, my parents before remission. I'm talking to the support system as the person with BPD before I'm better. We don't often get before remission exactly why other people don't understand us or don't understand the condition. We often don't get what's so unclear about the things that we've been trying to express. Thank you, Pasha. Because to us, the emotion is very visceral. It's very real. We live in emotional turmoil to the point where it becomes a part of our identity. So to us, there's it looks very frustrating. I spent a great deal of my life before remission trying to help my partners understand this, trying to help my parents understand this, trying to help my friends understand why I am the way that I was, right? And I was failing to accomplish this. It was very difficult to get these people to understand or see what pain I was suffering from. I never really had the thought, though, along the way, until I was better anyway. Before remission, I never had the thought that I wouldn't have wanted them to feel the pain. But that aside, I very much so pursued behavior, which would deliver the way I felt as packaged neatly as I tried to make it packaged right. I delivered this pain to my partner. I delivered this pain to my parents. I delivered the pain that I felt with this condition to my friends. And I never meant to hurt them, right? But the dynamic of the relationship, how it went back and forth. She'd say something that would upset me or scare me. Then I would say something to try and show her the pain I was in. It wasn't because I actually wanted her to hurt. If I could go back in time to before I was better, if I could give myself some advice, I would have said, to help them better understand. I would have said, firstly, they'll never understand, Kevin. They won't get it. And I'm not saying that you should stop trying to make things better between you two, but you should most certainly stop trying to get her to understand, because she won't. What we want from the partner, I know what you want pre-remission, Kevin. I know you want her to come swoop in and save the day. I know you want her to say, please, you can tell me anything. Babe, I'll never leave you. You can tell me the darkest thoughts and we'll work through them together. I know that you want to say that to her. And you think that or you want her to say that to you, excuse me, and you think that that will help. It won't actually help. Now, could the partner say that? Could the parent say that? Could they say, I'm going to look past all the emotional weight. You can tell me anything and I'll help you walk through it. Sure, you could say that, partner, parent, friend of someone with BPD. But what will that yield? Honestly, what will it yield? If my wife had that kind of attitude, and by the way, she kind of did have that kind of attitude about it, that come to me with anything, I'll be there for, whatever. Thank you, Bon Bon. Thank you, Red. It still doesn't solve the problem, right? So that tells you something. It tells you that that's not the answer that we're looking for. So when there's a certain level of awareness when you're trying to get better, when you're trying to get to remission from BPD, which seems to include and be encompassed in the fact that other people need to understand it, right? If my partner just understood, then I get better. If my parents just understood, then I might be able to heal. I want everybody to understand something here. The outside world understanding what you're going through will not heal you. It will not make it better. You might feel slightly less alone, but not really. They'll never really, truly experience it. Your partner, like mine did, they could look at you right in the face and say, I feel your pain. They don't, though. They don't feel your pain. They feel their pain. And that's one of the keys here. That's one of the keys. It's when the BPD person starts to understand that the outside world is affected by their behavior. Do you see what I mean? That was one of the first things for me. And if I'm being honest with you, I went most of my life thinking that I understood that other people were in pain because of this too. But I wasn't truly, I truly wasn't fully aware of the degree of suffering that it was causing my partner. And I think if you have BPD and you're trying to get your partner to be more supportive, or you're trying to get your partner to better understand, one of the tricks in getting them to better understand is to better understand their pain, is to better understand how it's affected them, to own that, to be accountable for your contributions to that. That doesn't mean guilt, blame, shame, embarrassment, fault. Those things, like I always say, are largely unproductive. But with BPD, you do have a superpower to better understand your partners, right? So when you're trying to get your partner to understand this, thank you, Michelle. One of the best bridges to have them try to understand it better, to try and work out some of these compromises and, work with you on some of these boundaries that might produce a better life, is to fully understand their perspective to the best of your ability. Now, having BPD, you are extremely capable of understanding the outside world. You are extremely capable of recognizing and understanding your partner's pain, parents' pain, your friend's pain. You are able to understand these things. Now, we'll hide from it because we don't want to carry the weight of feeling like we're at fault for their negative experience. And that hurdle will keep you kind of trapped where you are, where we're chasing the affection from them. We're chasing the, as we the word attention, but chasing attention from them, all those kinds of things, which are extremely unproductive, right? That frozen, trapped feeling where you don't understand why this is happening and it just keeps happening comes because not only are we running from some of these fears, but we're also curating our environment. We're creating and crafting the circle of people around us to be those which keep the dynamic going. As long as they don't understand, I don't have to focus on getting better because they don't even get it. You see what I mean? It's a big ass hurdle in the way of getting better. For a long time, I'm pointing the finger at my wife. I'm pointing the finger at my parents. I'm pointing the finger at my friends. I'm pointing the finger at my boss. I'm pointing the finger. And there's no energy or time being spent on working on myself. if I could just get my partner to understand and see why I did this, to understand what's going on here, then maybe I could get better. Well, yeah, maybe if you left your partner, you could get better. You know what I mean? Maybe if fill in the blank, you could get better. These are all outside things, out of your center of self. If you left that relationship, that doesn't really have any particular bearing over you being able to feel good enough about you from the authentic perspective of self, which is you must be able to feel good enough. That has to happen whether you're in a relationship, whether you just broke up, whether you've been single for years, whether you're about to be in one. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You still need to feel good enough. And they need to understand their role in this as a supporter is limited in terms of what they can do to actually change your behavior. And the sooner that they understand that, and the sooner that you separate their actions from your feelings, the faster you will get better. There are easier ways and harder ways for your partner to say, hey, I think this might be BPD talking. Maybe we should look at that. There are easier and harder ways for your partner to say, we need a boundary here. Getting better means giving them boundaries. You want them to better understand you, then understand what they're suffering from. Give them back some of their free speech. Give them back some of their life. Give them back, their ability to choose to be with you, not to be forced to be with you out of consequence of what you might do if they were to leave. You see, that type of dynamic creates a weird power struggle, which doesn't end up going anywhere. That said, I will go ahead and turn over to the comments here. I think I'm doing this alone this morning at the moment, so bear with me. If I miss something, just keep trying, and I'll see as I can get to you best I can. All right. Going back up to the top here. I'm going to start with Tanya. I might, if I miss something, just say it again. Okay. I'll just try really hard to get as much as I can done here. Tanya says, was off work for over a year, starting a new job today. Any advice? Yes. So your past doesn't determine your future. Your past doesn't determine who you are. I would say that so far you don't have any problems yet because it's a new job, right? So maybe just like imposter syndrome, but everybody feels anxious going into a new job. So that's a pretty neurotypical thing. But I wouldn't worry too much about things that haven't happened yet. I'd go in with a positive attitude of trying to make the world a better place. And that world is your nuclear household, is your presence at your job, your interactions, your micro interactions with your friends and family, your coworkers, your boss. The more that you focus on being pleasant, I think the better the time that you will have, and the less issues that you will end up having, right? Justin says, not everyone is your friend. Don't overshare at the workplace. I do like that. Keeping a compartmentalization kind of theory, Justin is spot on about that. When you compartmentalize, you're protecting parts of your reputation, parts of how you feel about yourself, your rapport with yourself, and all those around you, right? Rizy says, hi, my partner was acting different than he did before, and we just started dating a month ago. Well, there's a honeymoon period of every relationship. Usually it includes a lot of love bombing. It includes that deeper connection because the relationship in the honeymoon period is based on the chemistry that you've had together. It is not based on a bond of any real type or substance or any physical sense, in the world. Like we haven't blended our lives together yet in the honeymoon phase and had to start negotiating core values and all that kind of stuff. But the honeymoon phase temporarily solves the lack of opioids naturally produced in the body of a BPD person. It will make them feel alive. Thank you, Tara. But as the relationship starts to mature, which happens about 1 to 3 months in, reality sets in, and that's when you may start to see some issues. So that's an entirely normal thing to happen. Let's see. All right. Kalash. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. I see a lot of evil things that BPD people do. I don't see a difference between BPD and NPD. Well, that makes sense. Yes, there is overlap for sure. And NPD is narcissistic personality disorder for people who don't know. The narcissist and the BPD individual do have differences, though. The narcissist will take to get, the BPD person will give to get. That's the number one primary difference, but they're both founded in tragic moments. They're both founded, usually very early in childhood and develop as negative coping mechanisms. They're both personality disorders. They're both cluster B, there's going to be some shared traits. I used to split into a narcissist, so much so that I got diagnosed with narcissism during a split. So that is a thing. Emily said, I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, and autism is a fear of abandonment, a symptom of autism. Well,
It's called the Stability Circle. If you see any of our videos, you might have seen us promoting it a little bit. It is a great place for you to proceed on this self-paced journey that's interactive, graded, incredibly introspective, and it's not just some bullshit introspection where you do a worksheet and then you just have to think about what you just wrote down. It will tell you what it knows about you. It is a trained neural network node on all of my teaching, all of my stuff. It's meant to be an affordable way to help everybody try and get better and move in the right direction. There are some pretty cool features in there besides being able to track your progress very thoroughly and get real world actual advice about what you should be doing right now. Very specific advice, like very much real next steps that you can implement immediately and get better. We also have the split decoder, which all these situations that you're confused on, you don't know what the hell's going on, you type it out. It's very simple. You tell it whatever you feel comfortable telling it. And it's going to give you the most introspective, full-on, correct perspective, like just the best possible guidance that it can give you. We have the reflection engine in there, which is a communication tool. So it's meant for you to put in those awful, ugly texts, or you have those ideas where you're trying to figure out how to talk to your partner or anybody. How do I say this to my boss? How do I say this to my friend? Oh my God, they piss me off. I'm going to text. You don't text there. You don't go have that conversation. You jump into the portal, into the circle, you hit the reflection engine, you type it out, you pick a tonality. You can rerun it with different tonalities too, if you like. Maybe assertive, maybe soothing. And you see what I would say about it. And it will give you an accurate depiction of what I would tell you to say that would be much more likely to get you what you want. This whole learning process is exciting. It's fun. And you might actually get something. And while you're doing all this, the split decoding, the reflection engine, the interactive, introspective worksheets, it's not just giving you advice right there and actionable steps. It all pools together and it gets to know your emotional fingerprint, and your dashboard, where all your progress is tracked, is going to become more and more rich in ideas and helping you figure out exactly what you're suffering from. It will start suggesting certain worksheets and certain activities based on what you have going on. And we're working on some really cool stuff to expand it. Some really interesting things that I don't want to give too much away because it's really fun for me to release this stuff.
I would say that anybody could, all the symptoms of BPD are measured on a scale in my mind, right? So a neurotypical person who does not have BPD, could have any disorder, might have a 10 out of 10 fear of abandonment. That's enough to destroy your life without even being diagnosed with BPD. So I'm a big fan of not focusing so much on the labels and focusing more on the traits that you are experiencing, the behavioral mechanisms that need to change in order to get happy. It is not uncommon, though, for somebody with autism or ADHD or any neurodivergent type of patterns to experience some crossover or overlap or some BPD symptoms. Fear of abandonment is, I would say that it is a fairly common, we'll say, side effect of having something that makes you neurodivergent, because other people don't understand how you think, feel, behave some of the times. So the abandonment could be more real. You could be seeing some abandonment, could have seen some abandonment, of which would exacerbate that symptom, if that makes sense. Chelsea says, how do I control it for myself and deal with it for me? Taking extreme ownership of your life is the answer. Chelsea, meaning what can I be accountable for in every situation that I'm in? That is how I think, and that is how I operate in remission, and it has served me very well. The more that I take control, I get sick on a plane. Like, how was I responsible for that, right? It wasn't because there were 300 other people on the plane. It's because I bought the ticket. I got on the plane. Did I actually expect that I would never get sick getting on an airplane? How was I responsible for my kids being late to school? How was I responsible? I look for my accountability in everything, even if it's definitely someone else's fault. If your partner cheated on you, you are the one who picked the structure of which you get into a relationship. You chose to be with this person, right? So analyze your methodology for choosing your next partner. And then you'll be less likely to have that again, right? And alter your expectations too, because not everything's always going to go favorably for you all the time. User 78 says, I can't have a relationship because of my BPD. It's so bad. Many people end up in that boat where we just isolate in order to avoid having to deal with the tragedy or the loss of a relationship. It can be very difficult, but we are social creatures. I don't believe that we were meant to be alone. We have so much love with this condition. It would be a shame for that to go to waste. I think that finding a relationship is a good idea, but I think that the grounds of which you engage in a relationship matter and make it more or less likely to work, right? So have a look at your boundaries, have a look at how invested you get, and remember that you cannot live a successful relationship by outsourcing how you feel about yourself into your partner. It's unsustainable. Lizardo says, I have a question. My cousin was diagnosed with histrionic. What is that? Histrionic personality disorder or HPD, is one of the 4 personality disorders in cluster B. It is more petulant, more externally expressed. It is very temper tantrum, over the top kind of reactions. Drama is the big word for this one. So displaying very dramatic behavior and responses to stimuli in the world as a mechanism to try and control and curate your world, basically. And that's what that is. I would have gotten diagnosed with histrionics at the right moment, just like I did antisocial personality disorder, narcissism, and of course, BPD, the primary diagnosis for me, just given the right moment. I think we bounce around in there. And like I said, there's a lot of overlap. Emmy, good morning, Emmy. How do I tell my friends that I sometimes feel like they will leave me or that I feel last behind? Well, I would be careful as to how I answer that question because I don't know the truth. Like with BPD, we create these perspectives and narratives that kind of protect us and keep us protected. So I don't know if they actually are leaving or you're left behind, or if it's just your perception. I used to feel that way, like everybody was leaving me behind and overlooking me and ignoring me. But in reality, Emmy, I was creating the world of which curated that reality. I would be unapproachable. I would be neurotic or harassing. There were certain things that I did that made me less approachable, less invitable. And then I would also put myself in positions where everyone else would just show up because somebody was like, hey, we're going to meet and bowl at this hour. And then because nobody reached out to me in specific, I painted myself as the martyr, which was an appropriate way for me to then get attention, which converts into affection through sympathy. Very hard to admit that could be going on, but those are my thoughts on that. Do I know that's happening? I'm not sure. How would you approach them? Before you approach them, I'd take a hard look at the things I just said to ensure that you're not making this the reality. If you are, then approaching them would be more on the manipulation side where I'm trying to control them to feel better about me. I would be asking myself, how can I ensure that I'm not left behind? Not by forcing them, although having a conversation may indeed then be the next natural thing. But I first would make sure that all the things I said aren't out of key before I pursued them. Somebody says, is it normal to have really big hyperness and then being really depressed later? So, this common bipolar is very much like that, described as these giant mood swings, right? But with BPD, they're usually more erratic and quicker moving. BPD people can go from being extremely happy to extremely depressed in a matter of minutes. And then right after that, they can be, confused. And then right after that, they can be angry. And then right after that, they can be happy again. It just bounces around, with a BPD person. So that being said, it is entirely normal. Yes. And that's because we outsource how we feel about ourselves into the outside world, which makes it very difficult for us to feel good, because the outside world's not always going to go the way you want it to go. Grunder Mama says, I have no symptoms when I'm single. But here I am, I'm married. Yeah, I get it. That's because, when you are single, there is no one, that you feel that close connection to, where you are relying on them to fill those empty pieces of the pie, that you yourself are supposed to be, responsible for filling. So, like I said, many of us will avoid relationships because it hasn't gone very well. But I think the better answer would be asking yourself why certain things become exacerbated in the relationship. Why are you so scared of abandonment when you have someone? If you were so okay with being single before, do you see what I mean? I would look at it from those perspectives to try and figure out what's actually going on. Emmy says, how do I tell my friends that sometimes I feel they will? Okay, we got that one. Good. Man, in the chat shot down. So again, if I'm missing your question, just keep asking and I'll try my very best to get to it. Looney Bat says, I was diagnosed with BPD, PTSD, depression, agoraphobia, and etc. What is my best bet with these? Well, like I always say, BPD is kind of at the top of the pyramid. It is controlling and manipulating every single thing in your life. The reason that we're agoraphobic, which is the fear of being in situations out of your control, is because of the BPD. It's an inappropriate solution to the BPD. The PTSD is a result of the BPD in most cases. Well, they can back and forth, they can instigate one another, but they're directly connected. And as you get over the BPD, you get over the PTSD, you get over the agoraphobia, you get over the depression. These things are in place because, again, we have created a world where everyone in our life and everything in our life is telling us who we are. We don't accept who we are as a standalone person. We have to be married. We have to be in a relationship. We have to have this job. We have to have this path. People have to say these things. They must see us this way in order for us to feel good enough, which creates these kinds of problems, right? So I wouldn't feel too overwhelmed with the diagnoses. I have had every single one of those and many, many more myself. So I totally get it. But once I got the BPD under control, all these diagnoses just faded away. They just crumpled like they were never there, Yes, nutrition does play a role. Somebody said, what about DBT? I did a lot of DBT personally. It wasn't helpful enough for me to get out of this. I do like the radical acceptance part of BPD though. And like I always say, hey, if something's going well, if something's working for you, keep doing it. You know what I mean? Keep doing it. As long as it's healthy, and it's leading to a good outcome, that goes for anything. Tina says, like if you bring up their past, maybe it's because of yours. Think deep. I do agree. There's a lot of projection that happens with this condition. It becomes very difficult to see what's real. You have to be able to measure things on a scale that includes social norm, meaning if you put 9 neurotypical people next to you who you respect, like how would they respond to this? How would they interact with their partner? How would they talk about this topic versus how you are? And if you're way off from what you see these other 9 people would be doing, then maybe you need to change what you're doing, right? Even if it's difficult. If it's difficult, it tells you there's something you don't understand or something that you're scared of. You feel me? Michelle's encouraging some people to come back, that we go live here Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST. Thank you, Michelle. And thanks for everybody here that's helping out with the answers. Read all of you guys. I really appreciate it. I see a lot of you are trying to help. Star, just dropping some lines for other people who are new here. We go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST here on TikTok, and they are all posted on YouTube and Spotify if you miss them or you can't show up at this time every day.
Okay, Emily, is it normal to experience seeing shadow people in the corner of your eye, hearing phone ringing, etc.? Due to PTSD, CPTSD, and the nature of our hypersensitivity, the brain will do very weird things in order to survive. And that may sound really weird. You're talking about seeing people out of the corner of your eye and hearing audible hallucinations. My question would be, why would the brain create these things in order to keep you comfortable? That's an interesting question because seeing these things is not comfortable. But I'll tell you what, thanks, Red. The alternative of whatever you'd have to do in order to get rid of these voices, build a really healthy life with a really healthy job, with a really healthy relationship, have good relationships with your family and friends, have a purpose, have a hobby, take care of yourself in every capacity, would be what it would take in order to not have these types of hallucinations, in my opinion, right? I will also say, just briefly, that there is hallucinations whenever somebody brings that up. Although I have seen it with BPD, I get very strong urges to want to tell you to look into schizophrenia just because I think that should be crossed off your list. Okay. Damn. I hate how TikTok like snaps to the bottom of the chat. It's like I'm trying to like follow the chat, right? And every once in a while it'll just straight to the bottom. And I'm like, dude, I just lost like 40 messages. Emily says, can people with BPD go through a month of depressive state and then go back to normal? Yes, indeed. It doesn't have to be a month. It could be a day, could be a few minutes, could be a year. The time frames for our emotional dysregulation and getting back to baseline, for example, are different for everyone. There's the immediate chemicals that need to dissipate sometimes in certain circumstances. And then there's just the overall perspective that needs to be had in some circumstances. Looney says, I think my BPD was caused by the PTSD. Then perhaps that very well could be the case. It's very common for the childhood trauma to have created these types of coping mechanisms, which we then call BPD. Very common. Coconut says BPD is so challenging to support. It requires BPD to have self-realization. Well, exactly. If you don't have BPD, you will never fully understand BPD. That is just the bottom line. There's no way to sugarcoat that. As bad as somebody who's a partner or a support system, as badly as they want to believe that they can understand this fully, they will never fully understand it unless they have it. So with that said, there's no real point in trying to get them to understand it. But there are ways that as a partner or support system, you could be easier about delivering boundaries. You could be more sensitive about leaving the room and letting them see themselves on center stage. You could be more graceful in the way that we deliver messages and whatnot. So I would say that is something we can do. Thanks, Red. Cruz says, I know, but I want to stay with them. But I don't know if I'll be okay with that. We all have boundaries built inside. These are breaking points, right? So even somebody who's like in an abusive relationship, generally speaking, there is such a thing as going too far to where they will leave eventually. You know what I mean? Some people are more tolerant than others, and there's reasons for that. And usually it's a lack of self on the person's side who's getting abused. I think setting yourself some boundaries in terms of what you're willing to go through and what you're not is very wise. I think communicating them in a sensitive way is very wise, but then you also have to enforce them, which is where a lot of people fall off the rails. Because enforcing them is scary because that requires risk. We all think, oh, I need to set a boundary. This is great. I'm going to do this and then it won't happen anymore. No, that's not how it works. You set the boundary and then they violate it and then you don't know what to do. And you're like, they crossed my boundary. Well, no, you didn't do anything about it. It's not up to them to follow it. It's up to you to enforce it. And that's why it doesn't work a lot of times. Thanks, Jill. Good to see you. It's because you're scared to enforce it most of the time because you think they might actually leave, and they very well may. So what's the cost of you not enforcing it? Your dignity, your self-respect, your relationship reputation, right? The rapport between you, and you're also robbing them the chance to maybe be challenged and get better. Very tough to admit all that, very scary, especially if you're the one who sees it clearly right now
It's unfair and sucks that you're the one that has to enforce it, right? But it is what it is. Anxious says, what happened to Spotify? We are on Spotify. I don't see anything wrong with Spotify. I think I just had logged in there yesterday. But I will look into it. Anxious, if you are seeing a problem with Spotify, please do shoot me a private message somewhere, email, DM, whatever, and let me know what's going on for you so I can look into it. Like, one thing I don't know is what if Spotify is accessible in all countries, for example. I've never really looked into that. I don't know, So maybe there's something up with that, but shoot me a message. Good morning, Alice. Alice says, can you change just your behavior to get to remission? Fake it till you make it, kind of. Faking it till you make it is helpful, but the problem with faking it till you make it is that you're not understanding the perspective changes so you can live a better life that way. And that's one of the first phases. You're going to say, oh man, the way I've been doing things sucked. I can't do it that way anymore. I'll do it a different way that might not suck. And you'll get rewarded for doing it the different way. But until you actually understand why that way works and the other way doesn't, and why you're in that position, in that particular position, you will feel the pain still. So, for example, trusting your partner. Some of us had trouble trusting our partners, right? Before, I had a huge problem with trust. For a while, I was faking it till I made it, but the whole time I'm white knuckling it, I'm still in massive pain. I'm still worried that they're cheating on me, even though I'm not letting them know that. Do you see what I mean? And that's because I didn't walk myself through all of the fears yet. And I didn't walk myself through my personal insecurities and what I personally would have to do to fix that problem. Hopefully that helps, Alice. Trust is just an example. You know what I mean? That goes for a whole index of situations and skills and behaviors. Okay. Skills are things you do to learn perspective changes when you're doing my program. I don't focus just on skills so you permanently neurotically have to practice them. They're meant to curate actual perspective changes so you don't have to live with that pain. KKT says, BPD have an anxious attachment style. Yes, indeed. Generally speaking, BPD will have the anxious side of attachment. That is founded in a lack of self, which creates a number of insecurities, and it is also found in the fear of abandonment, which is directly tied to those insecurities. Tia, good morning to you. Tia says, at the point of not having a favorite person, anyone who tolerates me for any amount of time will do. Well, yes, the favorite person complex is a result of what we're talking about in the last question, which is a lack of self. So when we have identified that someone makes us feel good enough or better than good enough or rewards us for the behavior, sees us a little better, then we become attached to them. And then that attachment becomes unhealthy and we start doing a ton for them so that we can get back that same feeling, but it's unhealthy. And ultimately, the other person can feel that, which is why it generally doesn't work. Now, they may stick around because they really like getting treated the way that you treat them, but you'll notice that you build resentment in that case if they stick around and don't reciprocate, which who could reciprocate with that? Because they're more of a whole person, right? Generally speaking. So they don't have that same need to have to sacrifice to get like you do. Good morning, Pickle. Pickle says, my friend has BPD and can't seem to control her psychosis well. Any advice? Well, you won't be able to control that psychosis for her. I'll tell you that. That will be impossible. And I think you probably know that. But she might not know that. She might not know that. So I would say for you, as part of the support system, the number one piece of advice is set the example, right? So be sure that your behavior around your friend is always of the best example. If she isn't doing something correctly or making you feel uncomfortable, you have to be able to say, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. I understand you're upset. I can't do this at the moment. I'm going to step away for a little bit. I love you. Talk to you later, kind of thing. That will be hard for you to do. Because they have the perception of abandonment and all of that, but you can't let that manipulate your responses so that then the relationship's unhealthy and then they're not challenged and they don't get better and then you suffer and they suffer and everybody suffers and it just keeps repeating. We have to be willing to stand up on our own 2 feet sometimes as the partner, as the friend, as the support system, as the parent, right? and then show them that that's how they should be living. And it's very difficult to send this message, but thank you, Manning. But there are better and worse ways to do it. And if you keep showing up here, you'll start to figure out some of those better ways and some of the worst ways to avoid. Justin says, I used to have a rubber band with me and at the workplace, not to split on anybody. Yeah, so there's this tactic, similar to putting an ice cube on your forehead. You put a rubber band on your wrist, and whenever you're feeling dysregulated, you snap the rubber band. And it's really just a mechanism. If you ever seen the movie Inception, you know how they have that little trinket that they carry around with them to know if they're dreaming or not, because only they know the weight and all of this of the dye and all that kind of stuff. It's similar to that ideology. I think things like that are helpful, and I wouldn't discourage them. The rubber band's far more practical than something like an ice cube. Ultimately, you still need to get over the perspective changes that are necessary to have, so that you don't get into the position where you have to snap a rubber band, but that's a very helpful thing in the interim. Cruz says, I argue with my partner due to their past, and I think my BPD caused it. Any advice? Yes. Well, I was so upset with Carolyn, my wife, when we first got together. I didn't want her talking about anything related to her past. I didn't want to hear about her exes. I didn't want to hear any stories. If she told me a story that had anything to do with another guy, I would completely lose my shit, okay? I mean, like, totally. I remember her telling me one time, she said to me, it's like you want me to just, it's like you want to believe that I just existed when we started dating you. Like I don't have a past at all. And it makes it very weird. And then they feel like they can't bond with you as deeply. And I understand why that would be. She also said this to me. She said, like me, for example, I want to know everything about your past. And I'm thinking, like, why would you want to know that stuff? The answer is to form that deeper connection. You know how I always say that we don't like the word codependence, right? We don't like that because we enjoy codependence with BPD. But the reason that we ran from the concept, thanks, Jill, that when people say codependence is unhealthy, I ran from that idea because I was so scared of being alone. Nobody would explain to me, though, that there's something deeper than codependence, and that is knowing your partner as well as you know yourself to the best capacity. That's a hard thing to obtain if we are so hypersensitive and so hypercritical all the time. But thinking about the past, even your partner's past, is 100% a trigger. Third Ayers says, advice on autistic BPD relationship. Also, I have autism. We shot a whole episode a couple of weeks ago, I think it was maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, on BPD and autism. I think you should check that out. It is on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and you type in sensitive stability or Kevin BPD and you put autism in there too, you'll find an hour-long video that talks about all of this stuff in depth, so much more that I can give you right now. The autistic BPD connection works very well, just like the NPD BPD connection, in the sense that we attract each other. And if you can get over the NPD and BPD relationship dynamic, the tough parts of it, or you can get over the tough parts of the autism and BPD combining, it's actually, I think, one of the strongest types of bonds and relationships that you can have. So is BPD and BPD, right? The rule of thumb, though, basically, no matter what you have, whether you're neurodivergent, neurotypical, whatever, and no matter what your partner is, the recipe is quite simple for relationship success. And that is that both people have to want to be there and both people have to have a will to change. If both people want to be there and both people have a will to change, then it can work. But if everybody's focused on everyone else and they're not willing to focus on their own accountability and their own responsibility, then it's kind of doomed. You know what I mean? And not permanently doomed. Only one person has to start making these changes. And oftentimes you could set the example and influence your partner enough to get them to make these changes with you, right? But start with you, which is what you can control right now, what you could put your hands on. I'm not sure. I'm going to call you, sad. It looks like a sad face. Oh, I'm sorry, sad face. Sad face says, can you tell me why I'm having, thanks, Jill. Well, I'm having an easier time being casual with someone and falling apart in a relationship. Well, when it's casual, you're not outsourcing how you feel about yourself as much to the other person. Okay. So the more, whenever, when I was dating in between my two marriages, it was easy as long as I kept my distance. So if I didn't get attached, right? So if I was dating under the premise, you notice how if you show up on a first date, right? It's a first date and you don't expect them to not be talking to other people, right? That's the whole point that we have this term exclusive, that we're now exclusive or committed, right? It's because before you're committed, before you're exclusive, you're looking at stuff. So it would be really ridiculous, right, to show up to a first date and expect that that person hasn't been talking to other people. In fact, it's kind of an honor and it's kind of a compliment that them talking to other people, they still chose to spend this night with you. Do you see what I mean? But I would overlook them talking to other people. But the second I started getting attached, you see them a few times. Thanks, third. Eventually I'm like, okay, well, at this point, they need to only be talking to me because that's how I feel about them, right? And the second that happens, when I cross that threshold, that's when the relationship starts to go downhill, right? Um, and it's because it's because we almost make a conscious decision at some point to say, okay, this person, I'm going to let them have a certain amount of me. And if they don't like me, thank you, Jill, appreciate you, or they're not happy with me, or they feel disappointed in me, it will have a direct impact over how I feel about myself. That part's not conscious. You see, when we get into a committed relationship, we are taking our heart out of our chest and handing it to that person and saying, please don't break this, the most precious, vulnerable thing in the world. And then we actually expect them not to break it. Isn't that what I mean? But how can they not break it? It's so fragile. You're going to have moments when things aren't right. And we don't have that expectation. And of course, because we're selling ourselves out so much to the other person, we don't make as many mistakes in those regards as they do. You see what I mean? Mistakes, which is relative. Rez, good morning, Rez. Rez says, I left my favorite person who was avoidant. Any healing steps? Yes. So regaining yourself is the answer to not having the favorite person in the future, right? Not this particular favorite person in general, but favorite people, period. Okay. If I don't have enough weight in my own stock, if I don't have a reason to get up in the morning, like some purpose, and it can't be another person. I hate to say it this way. It can't even be your kids. Kids and partners are good motivation to get on board with something like the remission program I offer, and that's acceptable. But the reasons have to go deeper. You have to have a feeling that you yourself with your own two hands can make some type of positive impact on the world, the environment around you. It ironically can be making your family's life better, but we can't rely on our connection with our kids to produce changed behavior. Because by nature of that, you're still overlooking yourself. Caring about yourself and putting yourself on the list of people you care about and actually treating yourself like somebody, like a friend. We don't treat ourselves like a friend. You see what I'm saying? And that's part of the problem here. Regaining yourself is the answer. Rolling Girl, good morning to you. Good to see you here again. What can I do to take accountability after splitting on someone? I try not to split, but it happens. Well, first thing, Rolling Girl, we have to be okay with the fact that some people aren't going to like us because you may not be able to remedy it. There are some people that I split on and they're just like, I want nothing to do with Kevin for the rest of my life. Like, just go away. I don't want anything at all to do with him. And then I have to accept that that's reality. And that's not easy because it comes at the cost of what I feel is my perception of myself. Thank you, Amanda. But the more honest you are about these things, the better, right? So you can maybe repair it. Maybe, I don't know the specifics of the circumstance. And I think if you want to shoot me an email, there's an email button in my profile, and that goes for anybody here. If you want to tell me more about your story and what's going on, I do personally respond to all my emails. I'll give you my thoughts on it and try to point you in the right direction. But I would say number one, we have to be okay with the fact that they may not be okay with us anymore. Number two is focus on accountability, not blame, shame, embarrassment, fault. There's no need to go to them and say, I'm at fault. Instead you say, I've been looking at this and I know that I'm accountable for these things. Remember that accountability means, how can I improve? Where could I have done better? It's not anything to do with guilt, blame, shame, embarrassment, or fault. And then responsibility is the actions necessary to fix that, which may mean giving them space. That's an action. Maybe respecting their wish. That's an action, Uh, Mullion says, how long do you have to be seen to get a diagnosis? Unfortunately, you can get a diagnosis pretty damn fast. I say unfortunately because I've always had my qualms with the diagnostic process, right? And one of the center focuses of my dissertation and my study has been to try and reform how this is diagnosed, how this is looked at, how this is explored, this condition. Because I think it happens too quickly. I think it happens recklessly, but I also think that not enough people understand it. And there's reasons for that, socio-cultural, socioeconomics, like all sorts of reasons as to why mental health professionals overlook a lot of this. The answer is, if you have the right mental health professional, they could diagnose you rather quickly, and they could be very good at that. But you also could get diagnosed incorrectly a million times with a bunch of different other things, like I did, and like I see many of us. I often suggest not focusing as much on the label and focusing more on what behavioral changes I have to make, which is something I wish I would have done instead of wasting years trying to get diagnosed. Heather says, my BPD is mostly internalized. Overthinking has me distant from my partner. How can I open up easier? The answer is figuring out what you're afraid of, Heather, because you're afraid to open up to them, which is why you haven't. So what are you afraid of? Are you afraid that they'll reject you? Are you afraid that they won't believe you? Are you afraid that they can't help you? Are you afraid that they'll leave if you tell them the truth? Are you afraid of certain truths that you'd have to say out loud? Those are the kinds of ways that I would be thinking about all this. Because if you're unable to do what you know is the right decision, there's something you're afraid of. And our brain with BPD is so brilliant at hiding the fears. It's so smart at hiding the fears. I can't even accurately tell you how amazing our mind is at covering up things that we need to investigate. So take some serious thought and ask yourself why it's important that you open up, for example. That's a good question. Start with that. It's a little less threatening. Good morning, Hollywood. Good to see you here as always. I find it extremely hard to accept my girlfriend is super close with her ex. What can I do? Well, this is a core value. Some of us believe that it's acceptable, some of us being people. Thanks, Jill. That's a cool one. Some of us think it's acceptable to be friends with our exes. Some of us do not, right? And then you have to blend the core values if you want to be with somebody, and some can't be blended. Like if Carolyn, my wife, wants 8 kids and I want 0, we're probably not going to be together. You see what I mean? That's a pretty heavy weighted one and they're too far apart. What am I going to compromise and say I want 1 or 2 if I want none? You see what I mean? And is she going to go from I want a big family of 8 to 0? Like, that's a recipe for disaster. You know what I mean? But different core values mean different types of negotiations. She was good friends with a lot of her exes. Like, she just ended relationships amicably. And then it legitimately was just platonic from that moment forward. And a lot of people say, well, what does the guy, think, because the guy's probably, just wants to be with her. And that's why he's friends with her. And my answer is that it doesn't matter what the guy thinks if I trust her. You see what I mean? It doesn't matter what the guy's intentions are if she's getting something out of the friendship and it's seriously is platonic. When we got together, though, I made her ditch all of her male friends. Like, I was so jealous and so insecure. And then that shit backfired. Let me tell you what. Eventually, I was like, okay, yeah, you can have your best friend back, who was a guy who she dated for like 6 months or so. And there was like nothing between them. I've seen them interact. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But I had to modify my core value to get there. Amit, would you mind repinning that one that went up? I missed it, man. I'm sorry about that. I wasn't able to read it. So whoever asked it, I do apologize if we can't find that one again. It's a lot of comments today. It's very hard to keep up with them. In the meantime, I will answer Mila here, who says, real quick, what can be the longest, how long does it take to get to remission? It's different for everybody. There is a reason why my program is 2 months in length, though. It's because it can happen in 2 months with the right roadmap. 98 says, how do you make peace with yourself for ruining your relationships due to BPD? Well, you are your past, and you can't change your past. It's gone. It's not even real anymore. I mean, this live, after it's done, I can't go back and alter it. You know what I mean? So what I do is I look at the past like it's someone else's story, and I extract the lessons maturely based on accountability. So I'll look at a past relationship I ruined, and I said, how was I responsible for that? Oh, yep, I did. I overgave, and I expected them to respond with giving so that I felt good enough. It was inappropriate for me to have my friend or this partner try to fill me that way. That was an inappropriate ask. I should have done that to begin with. Thank you, Pasha. And that's a scary thought, because then I would actually have to fill myself. And what would that mean? Well, it would mean I'd have to be a person who would be okay being alone. I'd have to be okay with trusting my partner as long as I didn't show any reason not to. Thanks, Red. All those kinds of things, right? There's a whole list of traits and characteristics that I would have to do in order to have this type of relationship. Thanks, guys. That I claim that I want, and that's the price to pay. But that's also your answer. Barbie D. Good morning, Barbie D. Have you ever split from your parents? My daughter is 19, hasn't talked to me in a month. Yes, I stopped talking to my parents for 2 years. Thank you, Melly. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Red. Thanks, guys. I appreciate y'all. I split on my parents for a couple of years, and it was because I felt they were invalidating my recovery process. But in reality, I wasn't strong enough to deal with what I perceived as judgment from them and criticism. Thanks, Barb. I wasn't strong enough to deal with their perspective. It had really not so much to do with them and more to do with how I was looking at the world. And I think mentally, subconsciously, I knew that in order for me to take full accountability, thank you, Pickle, for myself enough to get better, I would have to stop talking to some of the people that I felt like were instigating me. And in reality, they were instigating me, but they were well within their rights of what they were saying and doing. They were behaving like neurotypical people. You know what I mean? But it was too triggering for me, right? So I had to split from them for a little while. Usually people with BPD come back, especially with their parents. Please do reach out to me, Barbie, and tell me some of your story. I work with parents all the time. It's probably 15% of the people that I work with are parents. Okay. That goes for partners as well. Probably 15% of the people I work with are partners of people with BPD. So shoot me an email and I will, see what I could do for you. So in terms of the program that I offer, I have two. The first is the BPD Remission Program. It is designed as a 2-month program to help people get to remission from borderline personality disorder, and it's quite effective. You work with me very directly, one-on-one. It's pretty intensive in the sense that it includes 24/7 tech support with me around the clock. We also meet for sessions, and then there's module work that you would have to do as well. But that's why it's successful, because it covers all these bases. The partner program / support program is for the parents, the friends, the partners of somebody with BPD. Thanks, Bonbon. And it is similarly structured, 24/7 tech support, slightly less session time because they don't typically need as much as someone with BPD trying to get out of it, and slightly less module work, but there's module work as well. Both of these programs are still on discount while slots last. We have had a plethora of people hitting remission within the last month or two. To the point where we decided to offer a discount. And this is the only time we've ever offered a discount outside of December. Usually we just discount around Christmas time to help folks out trying to save a little bit for the holidays. But I'm trying to fill the slots as fast as possible. So if you're interested, everything is 35% off right now, which is also coincidentally the biggest discount we've ever offered. So please do reach out. If you're looking for an easy way to try and start changing your life in little bits, little increments, or to raise your awareness or raise, your partner's awareness, you might check out our book. recently released in Amazon, 21 Golden Rules for Conquering BPD. It's a very concise guide, handbook style. It's a very simple read. Every single rule is designed to only take a few minutes for you to gather the message. And that's on purpose. It's kind of like a handbook that you can keep in your back pocket, so to say, pulling out whenever you need it. And the rules are very easy to understand. So check that out. If you like the book, leave us a review. Can't tell you guys how much the reviews matter here. Facebook reviews, Spotify reviews, and of course on Amazon, the book reviews really go very far. So thank you so much. I will say we have a wide range of people that show up to this live show every morning. And I see all these different types of questions coming in. Some of them might be more relevant to you than others. But I want to remind everybody that the awareness ladder for this, whether you're a partner, a parent, a friend, or you have BPD yourself, it's a very wide ladder. There are people who are in complete denial that show up here, who don't know even what BPD means yet. You know what I mean? They don't even know what the letters mean. Thank you, Michelle. And then there's people who are better and they have figured it out and they're asking questions, to try to help retrospectively understand this mechanism or that mechanism. So I do want to remind you all that my advice and the things that I say in the show are never meant to offend or set anyone off. Sometimes I'm answering questions for people who have climbed over certain hurdles. Other times I'm answering questions for people that may not understand that there's a hurdle in front of them. So I appreciate how supportive you've all been to everyone else in our little community here. I watch the love and the support go around every day that we do the live. And I'm thankful for that. Thank you for having grace for everyone else. Thanks, Jill. Thank you for understanding that they might not be at the same place that you are. Thank you for being patient with me when, we get all these questions. And I do my very best to get through as many as I can. I want to remind you all, thank you, Deja, that Friday is our question answer day. So we spend less time in the beginning on a topic and we spend more time in the chat. If you are desperate to get some questions answered, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Pickle. Try showing up. Tara, love you guys. Try showing up early on Friday. The people who get there earlier before the show ball really gets rolling, you have a higher chance of being able to get multiple questions answered, because this show just starts out. Thanks, Amanda. But I could tell we're all on the right path here. And those that show up every single day, I know it may be crazy to say, but based on your questions as they evolve over time, I remember you. I remember the questions you asked last week, the week before, the questions that you're asking now, and I can see the improvement. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. I look good with the flowers. I look good with the flowers. Anyway, I can see the progress and I support every one of you. I believe in everybody here. If you're showing up, listening to this stuff, which is not easy to hear, I know that you will get better. So keep showing up Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. US EST. If you miss it, check it out on YouTube. Check it out on Spotify. I will see you all tomorrow, bright and early. Thanks, Barb. Have a good day, guys.